G'day and welcome to Sweat Equity. My name's Leon Hayes and we're back for another week of the Sweat Equity podcast. Over the past week, I've had the absolute pleasure of travelling down to Victoria to meet with and hang out with Spencer Thomas as he took on his 100-kilometre race from Melbourne all the way through to Portsea. It was a fascinating, incredible run that he took on and the challenge that he took on over that 15-hour period. Over the course of the day, Spencer was challenged by injury, challenged by dehydration, but he had the love and the support of all his family and friends who were out there cheering him on. We got to see a number of the Spencer Thomas hats all throughout Melbourne, all throughout Portsea, as we followed him on the trail. It was an incredible sight to see. Over the course of the day and leading up to the event, Spencer was able to raise over $60,000, an incredible achievement. That included $4,500 of the profits that came from the Yeah Buddy X Spencer Thomas cap, which I'm holding right here. Now there are still a few that are available on the website. Feel free to jump online, grab your hat and continue to support Spencer's journey. Welcome to the Sweat Equity podcast. My name is Leon Hayes, your host, where we're going to dive into all things running and all things challenges that everyday people around Australia are taking on to achieve incredible things. This incredible woman has been working tirelessly over the past 6 months to raise funds for Bravehearts Foundation, as she embarks on a challenge to cover 7 marathons across 7 days across Australia over the coming months. Brooke Staff, welcome to Sweat Equity.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Brooke, what brings you to our couch today?
I have been embarking on a massive journey, I guess, over the course of probably the last couple of years, but more so in the last 6 months or so. I have made a decision to embark on the Bravehearts 777 marathon, and I was lucky enough to connect with you guys through my social media. And I guess, this is where we've landed. We connected on social media and landed here.
Well, look, it's been an incredible few months that we've got to get to know you. We first came across you, as you say, on Instagram, and we saw this bright, bubbly young lady who was really taking on this marathon of challenges, both personally from what we could see and from from a global standpoint, and really value-driven and mission-driven. And we just had to reach out and connect.
Yeah.
And as a part of that, we've gone on a journey together, and we'll talk about that throughout the podcast. But as we just warm up here today, I just want to come to understand, what is this 777 or 777 challenge that you're taking on?
So the 777 marathon was something that was set up and established by Bravehearts a number of years ago. They've been essentially, it's a cause, I guess, to bring people together to run 7 marathons across 7 states in 7 consecutive days, all in with the aim to build awareness and raise some really valuable funds for an organisation that dedicates their time to educating and empowering people who've experienced child sexual abuse. So it's around, I guess, bringing to the forefront a really confronting social issue that people aren't necessarily having conversations about, or, it's a taboo subject, I guess, that people aren't having conversations about. And it's utilising running and utilising this big challenge of running what eventually will be just shy of 300 kilometres across the week, to use that as a platform to build awareness and start conversations and build some more education, I guess, around child sexual abuse. And then the funding itself not only always directed towards education, but it's also directed towards supporting people who've experienced child sexual abuse and their healing. Wow, such an important and poignant movement that's coming across.
I know about Bravehearts Foundation from many years ago. We were talking earlier, but many years ago, it was founded by a lady called Hetty Johnson, who I think went on to become the mayor of Logan. And Logan's where I grew up, and straight out of Logan, as we like to say. And I remember that starting. and to see that all these years later, that must be, I don't know, 20, 22, 23 years ago that began, and for that now to be a annual movement with the 777 Marathon Challenge, and to have had such a take-up is so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And disclaimer, I'm from Logan as well. I come from Logan. But it is, I guess for me as well, I work in the child protection space. And even prior to working in the child protection space, I worked on the other side of the fence and actually worked with a lot of people who were actually perpetrating child sexual abuse. So I've got a broad spectrum of experience.
How did that come about, if you don't mind me asking?
So I, by qualification, I'm actually a forensic psychologist. So I started my career in the corrections space, and I became a sexual and violent offending specialist and worked in what was called the high risk offender management unit. So we worked specifically with offenders of violent and sexual crimes, and specifically child sexual abusers. So I spent a fairly extensive part of about half my career in that space. And then I guess my career trajectory changed a little bit, and I landed for some time working more so with vulnerable people. So started working in the disability space, still with the corrections lens, but worked in the disability space and was starting to, sort of see and unpack things, I guess, as people who are perpetrating, who are at risk of engaging in the correctional system, how vulnerable they are as well. Right. And then my career path sort of changed a little bit, and I landed in the youth justice space. And then that's, I guess, where I landed now, and I work in the non-statutory child protection space. So work with families where there is a risk that their children may be removed and placed into statutory care. But a vast majority of our families that we work with have significant experience, if not the parents that we're working with, but also the children in the home have experience with child sexual abuse. So that's sort of, where I landed in terms of this passion around Bravehearts. And
of course. Well, I mean, it's such an underlying movement of all of your career and your life history and the things that you've been, effectively had a lens on, whether it be lens on, from a very topical position of, I guess, the offenders, all the way through to those that have been victims of the crime.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the families that are now you're trying to really stop having happen again into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And building a lot of, I guess, psychoeducation, I guess, and building education in that space within the households and stuff with respect to how do we support people to heal from this, and how do we support people to go on and live really fulfilling lives, irrespective of their trauma. So it's also understanding, I guess, working with families to have them understand the experiences and the impacts that trauma has on, where they might land in terms of their trajectory with their lives. Yeah.
And this issue, it's a current and very topical issue. It's always happening.
Absolutely.
And you're seeing that on a daily basis. And
absolutely. And I think that's probably in part why I really wanted to support this movement, is because it is something that happens behind closed doors that broader society doesn't necessarily see. And whether that's because people are ignorant, and whether that's by choice or not by choice, the reality is that it is something that I get to see every single day and manage every single day. And I am in a position, I'm in a leadership position, so I'm also supporting a number of staff who are experiencing the vicarious trauma that comes along with this side of this type of work as well. Yeah.
And how do they? I mean, there's no way to get away from it. I mean, 9 till 5, you can clock off out of a factory and you can go home. You work in an office job, you can go home. Yeah. Nurses, frontline health staff, mental health staff, and your staff, they're constantly around this, and it's not like you can take a break from it. So have you used, I guess, different vehicles or opportunities or different systems to be able to, compartmentalize some of the things that you experience? And
So for me, that's probably where I landed with running.
Right.
So I think You're absolutely right. And having worked in this space, I myself have experienced burnout, and quite significant burnout, in particular, when I was working in the youth justice space. But when so over the last couple of years, I've picked up running and started to run, and I do a lot of running on my own, because that gives me an opportunity to get into my own head and to switch off, and to I do think about things with respect to how I'm going to support people, or how am I going to manage this. But at the same time, it's a good time for me to sit and reflect and use running. And this is a challenge. Every time you want to lace up your shoes, it can be a challenge sometimes. And with respect to motivation and discipline and stuff. But it just gives me an opportunity to just step away for a little bit, and push myself to, something that's completely different and outside the realms of what I do for work.
Yeah, because you're going to go back into it. It's always going to be there, and this outlet sort of giving you that opportunity. So I do want to touch on a little bit more around that the taboo of the topic that you mentioned in the beginning. Only because I think it's so critical that we do bring awareness to the fight that is there, that Bravehearts has been on for many years. I think everybody listening, I'm a parent, you're a parent. We'll unpack that a little bit shortly, get to know your family. But, everybody, you would, apart from offenders, would not see this as being a acceptable thing that happens in society, that a society today can't protect children in a way. But you're seeing that it's different, that society, the cracks are there, and people are getting through those cracks, unfortunately. So what can we do more so other than just bring awareness to be able to
I think you've raised a really valid point, that this child sexual abuse is it's an offence of morality. And it really challenges people's morals and values. And I think that's why people tend to turn their back and don't want to have the conversation and don't want to talk about it. First and foremost, though, people need to talk about it. People need to be open to having the conversation and open to talking about it. And I've been in positions where, and I've got a little bit of a joke that I tend to be someone who shuts down conversations, because I will say something, or I'll raise an opinion, or I'll share my experiences, and then people just stop talking. And
is that because it's too gritty and it's too overbearing for them to understand or comprehend, or want to accept that that's part of that's a real part of life?
I think it's a combination of. I think it is a case of people just don't know what to say, and people just don't know how to respond. But I think it's also a choice that people make to not want to get involved in the conversation. A little bit like politics, to be honest. Like, it's just people don't necessarily want to raise.
Everyone's talking about politics these days, more so than anything. Yeah. But it is such an important factor. But and this is something for children, as young as babies, toddlers, all the way through to, preteens, teenagers, all the way through to, age of acceptance of sexual activity.
Absolutely.
And even then beyond there to women who, where rape and that sort of thing is caused to them, and sexual harassment. So it's there in society from a very young age. Is it happening, regularly, that, in certain places, or are we able to protect our children? Like, my children go to school, for instance, and you'd expect that nothing's happening there. They're coming home, or we've got our eyes on them. Is there parts of society where that's not the case? Is it?
I think one point to raise is that this is an issue that doesn't discriminate, and this can happen anywhere. We've seen that there have been things raised in the media about some really high profile schools where teachers have perpetrated against children and young people. And the world knows the story of Grace Tame. And she's sharing her experiences of child sexual abuse as well. And but To be fair, we do tend to see it more in more vulnerable populations, so more marginalised populations. We do see an overrepresentation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people and children and young people. We do see an overrepresentation of young people from lower socioeconomic areas. I work in the Ipswich region, and it is a region that is highly marginalised because of the socioeconomic status out there. So it is probably something that we do see, and that is for an array of different reasons. It is. We do see children who are not supervised as frequently or as effectively in those regions. We do see other intersectionalities when it comes to children from those populations, and other intersections such as mental health and substance use. And those are the things that we can't ignore that play a part in this space as well.
Yeah. So there's so many angles that are coming at it. You say substance abuse, or it could be lines of poverty, or it could be manipulation. It could be grooming and guidance, or perceived guidance that's being given from an elder to somebody younger. And all of these things, it really is that people need to be aware.
Absolutely.
And try and protect those that are vulnerable and those that are younger and as much as possible.
Absolutely. And I think it's also understanding as well that there is also there's a difference between and this is a societal opinion, societal assumptions. There's a difference between child sexual abuse and pedophilia. Right. And so pedophilia is actually a psychiatric condition where, a person may be attracted to, is sexually attracted to a child. And whereas child sexual abuse can happen at any time by anyone. And so a child can be exploited in a sexual way by anyone. So there is a real differentiation between that as well. So
it's an ad hoc decision that is being done?
It's often about power and control. Right. Sometimes it's about a sexual attraction, but in many cases it is about control and it is about power. Wow. And so that's, I guess, one of the things that we need to, keep in mind and keep in the back of our heads as well, is that the more, and this is why we do see it more so in vulnerable populations, because the more vulnerable the child, the less likely they are to speak up. That's where it can become quite confronting as well.
And so we were talking about getting that release for their own personal time. How long have you been running?
So I've been running for a little over 18 months. So I started running, it was actually on the day of my daughter's 9th birthday party. So it was a week after she turned 9. So still remember the day, the 17th of September 2023 was the day that I started running. And quite literally, to start with, it was because I was out for a walk, because I was regularly walking. I was on a weight loss journey. I was regularly walking, and I was thinking all of these things through in my head about all the things I had to do to get my daughter's birthday party ready, and realized I didn't have a lot of time. So I was like, I've got to run home. I've got to get home quickly. And then so I ran a little bit and got to a driveway, walked for a little bit, and I'm like, I can get to the next driveway. And then that's how it started. It literally is I'm just going to run from driveway to driveway just to get home quickly. And then the next, when we went to the birthday party, some of my daughter's friends' mums were there, and they'd made some comments on my transformation, if you will. And I actually said to one of them, I said, I ran today. And they were really excited for me. And they were, and that kind of sparked a little bit of motivation. And, the next day I got home, and that afternoon I got home, and the next day I was like, I'm going to lace up my shoes again, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to see how far I can run this time. And that was probably, the rest has sort of been history since then. And just, slowly but surely, driveway to driveway, power pole to power pole. And
just incredible, it got more and more, the distance become longer and longer.
I still remember the day that I'd posted something on, I was sharing my journey on my Facebook, and my family was seeing it. And I still remember the day that I was like, right, I'm going to go 7 kilometers today, and I don't care how long it takes me, I'm going to do 7 kilometers. And I got 7 kilometers. It took me forever. But I was like, you know what, though, I finished it. And I still remember how much pride I had in myself. And I shared that. That was probably the first time that I shared my pride on social media, and the first time I actually shared my pride with my family, and with my friends, because it's probably something that I'd kept hidden. Like, I knew what I'd been achieving.
Through the transformation process?
Definitely through the transformation process.
And then it culminated to this, you've done the 7Ks.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a tangible achievement.
Yeah,
we'll talk about the other tangibles that you're going through, but a tangible, and so you could release that as hey, look what I did. What do you think we need that validation to,
I think for me, and I think for a lot of people, so I definitely don't think I'm alone in this, but a lot of people sit and wait and think that they need other people to be proud of them and other people to see what they're doing in order to actually believe in yourself. And, it doesn't matter how many times someone has said to me, you've got to believe in yourself before anyone else will believe in you, that I never actually believed that. And it's just like, I need people to tell me that I'm doing good. And I need people to tell me that, I need other people to fill my cup. And I think some of that also stemmed from, I'm someone who loves to fill other people's cups. Yeah. And I did get, for a long time, I made a lot of excuses for myself and was very much about, well, I'm looking after everybody else. Why isn't anybody else looking after me? But I forgot the key ingredient, and that was me. Like, I was just like, I'm waiting.
Setting time aside for yourself to be able to achieve those things that you wanted.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your daughter was 9, about a year and about half ago. So she's
10 and a half now. Yep.
And so you've been it was one daughter?
Yes.
One daughter. Yeah. And so you've been a mum for 10 and a half years. Back then, 9 years. Yeah. And you've got a job and a role that's from different dimensions, as seeing, the deep dark secrets of society, and the pressure that brings. Yeah. You're married?
Yeah.
Husband? Yeah. So you've got a relationship that you're trying to uphold, and family and friends. Yeah. And so as a woman or a man in that sort of scenario, which many of the listeners are, the pressure builds, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And often we put ourselves into the, into the back of the cupboard, put all that time energy into focusing towards providing, and but don't center it on ourselves.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
What was the outcome of that for you?
For me, I'd spent the course of 9 years investing pieces of myself into everybody else,
which we love to do, right? Yes. Like we want to give.
Yeah, and so I think when we first connected, and you were talking to me about to think about some metaphors that sort of describe my journey, and I did think about it, and I was having a conversation with someone at work recently, actually, as well, because we were talking self-care, and we were talking, one of the things that, I am a manager of a service. So we were talking about how are we supporting our staff, and we're talking, in the conversation for us at the moment is around collective care. So how do we support people, and how do we have conversations with people about how much they're investing into different facets of their life, which contribute potentially to burnout. And the way that I'd sort of described it is that I needed to start to see that all of these pieces, all of these hats that I was wearing, the manager hat, the mum hat, I'm a soccer coach as well, so the soccer coach hat, the soccer player, I'm a wife, I'm a cook and a cleaner, and I also dabble in photography and stuff as well, and just all of these different hats that I was wearing, they're puzzle pieces. Sure. And they're the pieces of the puzzle that fit together, but the big picture is actually me. I need to be the bigger picture. The bigger picture can't be work. It can't be mum. It can't be wife, because they're all parts of me. And I think when I became a mum, my identity shifted, and suddenly I was a mum. And not only did I feel and did I place the expectation on myself to invest wholly and solely into being a mum, I felt that the world around me had that same expectation of me. Yeah, sure. And I think I needed to get to this stage where I needed to remind myself that in order for me to be whole, all of the pieces need to fit. And it can't be just about one particular investment. It needs to be an investment in me.
Because then you have that investment in yourself, you can give far much more to each of those pieces, right?
Absolutely.
Whether it be as a wife or a husband, or as a mum or a family member.
Yeah. I think you go on a flight and they remind you, put your own oxygen mask on first, because you can't help anybody else if you can't breathe. And I had gotten to a stage, when my daughter was 9, I'd gotten to a stage where I was just like, and it was actually probably prior to that. My husband had some health complications, and it was, around that time that I'd made the decision that I need to, make a commitment to myself. Because if I'm not looking after myself, I can't look after anybody else.
Absolutely.
And it's around that time that you make that decision and you come to that realization that I was in a really deep, dark place. And I was around that time as well. I'd just gone through some job change, and had to do some deep reflections on where I was at. I was extremely resentful, and I just had recognized that I wasn't myself. I recognized that, my window of tolerance for people had shortened, and I'm a people person. But I just had held a lot of resentment towards a lot of people, my husband, my child, everything included, because I lost who I was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So touching that you're able to then see that this was a real issue.
Yeah.
And then make the claw with your fingernails, brightly coloured fingernails, by the way. We'll talk about that shortly. To make the changes necessary within yourself to then go on and become such a powerful, you always were a powerful, obviously, person, but to be able to bring that power and to be able to, allow yourself to really succeed.
I think one of the things that I really needed to do, I really needed to get real with myself. I was at a state like, that you got to look yourself in the mirror. And I work in a space where I'm expecting other people to be vulnerable and lay down their swords and accept that there's all of these issues and there's challenges. But, and I say this to my staff, like, you can't be prepared to expect this person to lay down their sword for you and go through the motions with you and be vulnerable and overcome all of their challenges and their issues, some of which are extremely complex, if you're not prepared to look at yourself in the mirror and go down the same journey as them. And so I think it's just, I had to get real with myself.
In that sort of instance, there's a trust building exercise.
Absolutely.
And I guess in looking in the mirror, there's a trust building exercise with yourself, that you can trust yourself to be able to make the changes necessary to do whatever it is that you want to unearth.
Absolutely. And, I've always been someone who wants to make a difference. I've been getting, even today, memories on my Facebook of things I'd put on my Facebook 10 years ago. And that's one of the things that I've recognized, is that the intrinsic Brooke that still exists, she existed 10, 15 years ago, but she was lost somewhere along the way. And I'm finding my way back to that. And I probably say I found my way back to that. And whilst it's taken a weight loss journey, it's taken a fitness journey, it's, for me, most of all, it's been very much about tackling my mental health. And, I used to say as well, oh no, I'm fine. And I'm good, and there's nothing wrong with me, and there's nothing, but looking at all of the things that I was putting in place and where I was at the time, and the things that I would utilize as coping mechanisms, like what I use as a coping strategy now to deal with my work is running. Historically it has been food and challenges with disordered eating and spending money, and those coping strategies, and I had to move away from those because they were becoming really toxic traits, and they were not only affecting my physical health, but they were really affecting my mental health as well.
And how did you do it? Like, how do you firstly, you got to look yourself in the mirror, as we talked about. You've got to make that realization. You mentioned spending money, splurging, or it could be buying the block of chocolate. I know that that's what I do. Like it's, I know that it shouldn't. This year I've given up alcohol. I don't smoke. I don't go out and party. All of these things. But it's a critical decision that you've got to make for each one of those.
Absolutely.
As a reason why you're making that decision.
Yeah.
How did that work for you?
So for me, it's probably not the first time that I've had to go through a bit of a addressing of my mental health. So in 2009, I had a really serious car accident, a not at fault car accident, and I broke my neck. And at that time I was, an elite football referee, and, put my life on hold for a really long time. And at that time I did, throughout my recovery, I did turn to alcohol for a period of time. And it was actually the decision to stop drinking alcohol and getting back on the exercise pathway that actually led me to meeting my husband.
Oh, wow.
So it's sort of something that I've sort of had to tackle before, and so it was sort of taking a bit of a dive into that Brooke and what she was going through and what she was experiencing at that time, and not wanting to go back there again. Sure. But one of the things that when I made this decision, I realized I could not do this by myself. So I reached out for professional support. And I think that's really important one of the things I really want to, I guess, get out there and share is that you don't have to do it alone, and there is no stigma that sits around going and getting professional help and professional support. So for me, because there were food challenges and issues, I first engaged with my GP. I engaged with a dietitian who was able to sort of I've been to nutritionists before, and you think you know everything about food and healthy eating and stuff, but things change, everything shifts all the time, and so I sat down and spent some time with a dietitian, and not just one appointment. Like I had a few multiple appointments.
Recurring religious confirmation.
Yes, absolutely. And in order to stay on track. And then I also invested in psychology, and I'd been through the therapist space before. Just in relation to like my accident, and I'd had a PTSD diagnosis at that time. But this time, because I knew that a lot of the challenges sat and revolved around my coping mechanism, which was food and disordered eating and my relationship with food, including the relationship with myself. So I engaged with a weight management specialist psychologist, so someone who actually specializes in the psychology that sits around weight, food, relationships with food.
The reasoning, the decisions you go through, preamble to it, and after why you're doing it, what the feelings that come about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
So I got that help and I got that support, and then when I felt I guess a mutual decision to feel that we're on the right path and that we can move forward. Like I've been able to step away from that now and continue the journey. And
you keep those tools on a daily basis,
absolutely.
I'm imagining.
Absolutely. I think it's all about filling your toolkit. Yeah. And I do say, like I've got this phrase, I guess, that I say, a little bit of a motto that, is life's a journey of ongoing improvement and continuous improvement. So every day we're working towards continually improving our outlook on life, our where we sit, our lifestyle, etc. And so I think it's just, but in order to move towards continuous improvement every day, we've got to keep filling our toolkit.
And how does that we won't call it addiction, but that those different decision-making processes that might not have had a positive impact on your life, how do they change now? Like what does a day look like for you where you're replacing that negative decision or that poor decision with something more positive?
There's a lot of affirmation. A lot of it does definitely stem from affirmation, and I've got like I said, a lot of colour, a lot of vibrance, but I'll get up and I'll go for a walk. I'll have a conversation with somebody. There's a couple of people in my network who I've sort of been who've been part of this journey from the very beginning, who I've been able to sort of lean on, and that's one person who I work with, and then I've got a core group of friends who I have who have just they've backed me the whole way. Like they loved the Brooke that was, but they still love me for who I am now. And, I know that I've got their endless support and stuff as well. So I think one of the things that we do talk, and we can talk about it as addiction, like I've spoken it as food addiction before. And one of the challenges that comes with disordered eating is that you can't not eat. When it comes to things like alcohol, drugs, smoking, you can make a decision to stop that because it's not necessary for you to actually function, for you to live. But one of the things that I went through, and one of the tools that's in my toolkit, is understanding food and nutrition, food as nutrition and nutrition as fuel. And then fuel as being self-care. So my food now is about making me feel good and making me feel satisfied. And we moved away from a conversation around when I'm eating, not eating to feel full, we're eating to feel satisfied. So once you're satisfied, then you're done. But if there's a challenge that potentially leads me back down into this negative path, it's around thinking I've got to reflect back on how far I've come. I've got to reflect back on the things that I've achieved, and the things that I still want to achieve. And then I'm not going to lie, one of the key motivators for me is I've got a 10-year-old little girl who watches my every move.
Absolutely.
And I need to be the best role model for her that I can be, because one of the things that I vowed when I became a mum, especially as a mum of a little girl, is that I didn't want her to experience what I did when it came to not just the disordered eating stuff, but in terms of body image and self-esteem challenges that that I experienced as a child.
And that are there in society, on social media and the schoolyard.
And I needed to create a home that was free of that and a home that was safe for her. So I know that she's going to be exposed to it in society, and I know that she's going to be exposed to it in the community. But I want her to grow up to be a really strong woman who can challenge those societal beliefs.
That's so beautiful. And you can start to give her those tools that have come apart, a part of your journey, and a reason why, going back to that trust issue that,
Absolutely.
Your team has to build with their clients, building that trust with your daughter, and that trust can only be really done through doing and through seeing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when I started having the conversations with my husband around wanting to lose weight and wanting to look after myself, and how we got here was he made a comment to me that I needed to stop looking after everybody else and start looking after myself, because I was investing in everybody, and I almost use it as an avoidance tactic, like I'm not going to do this for myself because I have to do this for someone else, or I have to do things for other people. And, aside from the fact that I do view it as, I've finally got some permission to actually invest into myself. I remember when I was talking to him about losing some weight and stuff, and, when I talk weight, like I've lost 60 kilos.
60 kilos.
Yeah. So when I was talking to him about that, I remember dropping my little girl to school, and she would have been 8 at the time, but almost 9. And she was really upset and she was in tears. And I asked her why. Like, I was like, what's wrong? And, I'm particularly nurturing, wanted to really try and understand what was happening for her. And she just said to me, she said, "Mum, I don't want you to be skinny." And I asked her where it was coming from, because I go to a very conscious effort to not have certain conversations around her, because I don't want her to be hearing my sense of negativity. And I said to her, "Where did you hear that from?" And she said, I heard you tell Dad that you want to lose weight. Why do you want to be skinny?" And it was a good opportunity for me to actually open the door and say, this isn't about me being skinny. This is about me being healthy, because when I'm healthy, I can give more to you. And then so we started having the conversation. I was coaching her soccer team at the time, and I said, wouldn't you like mummy, when mummy gets a bit healthier and a bit fitter, she can actually run around with you at soccer instead of just telling you what to do. And so we started this stuff. This is about being healthy, and this isn't just about weight. This isn't just about physical appearance, and this is also about what's going on for me in the inside. And I remember saying to her, I asked her why she didn't want me to be skinny as well, and she said to me, well, I don't want you to change because you'll be different. And, you know, we started explaining to her, and I said to her, mummy just wants to look on the outside like she feels on the inside. And that was my opportunity to get her to understand it. I mean, we had to go through the literal stuff. Sure. She was like, well, you know, you don't want to look like that on the outside. But then we were talking about, you know, this is about a mind, body, soul sort of experience. And because she's been on that journey with me, like she now asks me, even driving to school this morning, she said, Mum, can I play a song in the car? And she picked up my phone and she found the song, and I was like, oh, what song are you going to play? And at first she only heard it on the radio a couple of weeks ago, and now she's been playing it on repeat, and it's Break My Stride. And when we heard it on the radio, she just said to me, she's like, Mum, this is your song. And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, you know, nothing's going to break your stride, nothing's going to slow you down. And I said, oh, in my running? And she goes, no, in everything you do. Wow. So it gave me that reminder that our kids see everything we do.
They're sponges, and they're absorbing, and they become mirrors. Absolutely.
And now she knows every lyric of that song. We've got it on repeat.
And that mirror, that, you know, when you're looking in the mirror to make those changes, they're looking at that mirror as well. Absolutely. But they're looking at a daily basis at you, rather than, they don't know to look into the mirror and do anything other than make sure the hair's brushed. And most of the time they don't even bother doing that with that sort of age. So fascinating. Yeah. It's such a beautiful, beautiful story, in the way that you've come from so many challenges. And a background of learning and making trying to make positive impact on society. And not just going down one particular road in your work life, but in multiple facets of that, which I just think is so. It sets such a foundation for everything that you've done now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you've had and then you've had these challenges from a car accident to, you know, through life, putting on all of this weight and then losing it.
Yeah.
I mean, 60 kilos. That's.
And I think when it comes to weight loss as well, I think there does come an additional challenge with accepting the person who you are on the outside now, because you do go through these motions where you've created this identity around who you are as a person over here, and that can sometimes be an ongoing challenge as well.
And it's a loss of that person as well.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, like, I've lost half my body weight.
That person doesn't exist anymore. No. And you've got to learn the way that you should feel around other people.
Yeah.
Your husband, for instance, you've got to learn to feel the way how you around the other kids on the soccer pitch.
Yeah.
You know, now you're running and you weren't doing that before.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned your friends as well. Some of them will come. Hopefully, all of them have come on this journey, but most likely, you know, people do drop off along the way.
Yeah.
And you're now got to envisage yourself in a new way with them.
Yeah, for sure. I think as well, like, it's, and I'm not going to lie, like, this journey, I've won friends and I've lost friends. But I've also come to the conclusion, I guess, come to some sort of acceptance, I guess, that's just life as well. But, you know, I joked with someone the other day that, you know, when I turned 40, I stopped giving a shit. But I think it's actually this reinvention of myself. I do feel like I'm a lot more carefree a little bit, like I do, but I like myself. I like my own company. And
you may be carefree now, but like you do you still have doubt? Does doubt creep in?
Absolutely.
How do you challenge and deal with that?
I think sometimes it's just it literally is just using the voices in my head to tell the voices in my head to shut up.
Because you do realize you've got to that 7 kilometre mark
Yeah.
and posted it as one of your first early posts on Instagram.
Yeah.
And now we're going from 7 kilometres to 7 marathons
Yeah.
in 7 days across 7 states.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am super mindful as well that my journey, when it comes to running, has been quite quick. And so the story around my first ever marathon as well, I won a competition, an Instagram competition to win 2 entries into the Sydney Marathon. To be fair, I did not enter to win those marathon tickets. Right. I entered to win everything else that came with,
like the kit and the running hat,
the shoes and some headphones, and like that's why I entered. I was like, no, I want this. And when I contacted the girls who were running the competition, they said to me, "Oh, are you going to run the marathon?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't think I can." And like I just 8 weeks prior to this, it was the Sydney Marathon, so 8 weeks prior to that, I just run my first half marathon at the Gold Coast. And that was my goal. That was my big first goal. It's like, I'm going to run. And when I started running in September, I was like, I'm going to enter the Gold Coast half marathon. I'm going to do this, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be great, and I'm going to cross the finish line, and it's going to be, thank God you've done it, sort of thing. And then I won these Sydney Marathon tickets, and I was like, oh, I don't think I can. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get to Sydney in 8 weeks. And I haven't trained for a marathon. And then I put out these hypotheticals on my Facebook. I just put this, hypothetically, if I happen to win some hypothetical tickets, does anyone have a hypothetical bed that I could sleep in? And I've got some friends that I spent a period of time in my childhood living in Sydney, just a short time before we moved to Queensland. And so I had some friends and stuff there, and one of them reached out and said, oh, I'll do it. You can come and stay with me if you want. And which was really cool, really lovely. But then when I was unpacking whether I'd actually do it, I realised that the Sydney Marathon was actually the 1 year anniversary of me starting to run. Wow. So it kind of felt like the universe was telling me that I have to.
The serendipitous moment.
Yeah. So I managed to, because there was 2 parts to the prize, my friend in Sydney actually said, look, because I said, if you give me a bed, I'll give you all of this other stuff, because it's for me and my friend. And so I was like, if you can do that for me, then I'll give you this, and you can have the marathon entry and stuff as well. And she said, I'll run with you. She's run a few marathons before, and stuff as well. And she said, if you give me all of this stuff, I'll fly you down with my frequent flyers. So it all just worked out, and it's just like, well, this is incredible. So the whole journey to the Sydney Marathon was huge. And I did the Sydney Marathon in just under 4.5 hours, and it was well under what I had aimed for. I'd aimed for a 5-hour finish. And when I was coming back through, it was around the 38 kilometre mark. The girls who won the tickets from, they had a marquee sort of support area set up and stuff as well, and they caught my eye. I caught theirs, and they gave me a big hug at 38k. And I'd never met them in person before. And they gave me a big hug, and one of them filmed me, and you can actually see I'm like wipe tears away, because I'm so close to the finish line now, and I'm about to do this. And once I crossed the finish line of the Sydney Marathon, I was like, I can do anything. Yeah. I can do absolutely anything. And I remember sitting down, we'd walk through the chute, and I remember sitting down, and this security lady said, no, you can't sit there. And I said, I just ran a marathon. You can't tell me where to sit. I'll sit here, and I'll get up when I go. But it was just this case of, I can do absolutely anything. And then not long after the Sydney Marathon was when the registrations opened for 777. And I've spoken before, I don't believe in finish lines. Once you hit something,
that's the start line.
That's the start line for something else. That's just a milestone. That's just a stepping stone to what's next. And so for me, it was just, Sydney Marathon, tick that box, done that, what's next? And whatever's next has to be harder. It has to be another challenge.
But that's, you also talk a lot about resilience, right? And I mean, just in this short story that we've been able to get to know you, you've had built up that resilience over time.
Yeah.
And it's such a powerful thing to be able to take to the next one and to
Yeah.
the next one and to the next one, because every achievement or every positive decision
Yeah.
is a reaffirmation and a rebuilding of that foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me as well, like this whole journey, whilst right now I'm doing it, like my goal is this 777 marathon. The goal is raising funds for Bravehearts. It's not the end. It's just the next stepping stone. It's just the next, like it's a bigger picture for me.
Well, there was just so much color and vibrancy that we saw, right? So we can never, we're never going to be able to unlock that. I don't think.
Yeah.
I think that you've got a little bit on it. Hopefully, the viewers can see today on the earrings and your powerful blue shirt there. But we were meeting yesterday to do some design work and just this powerful color.
Yeah.
And that's something you live your life by now.
Absolutely.
It's every day is showing up in a life of color.
Yeah, absolutely. So, ironically, actually, you've touched on that. Prior to being Run Brookie Run on Instagram, my Instagram handle was actually Our Life in Colour.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because I am a firm believer that we need to live our lives in colour, in real life. Like my daughter said to me the other day, she said, "Mum, do you realise that the 1920s were actually really colourful?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "I thought they were black and white." And it's just going back to some of that, like the olden days were black and white, but it's just realised, like, we need to, and this journey has really taught me, and you talked resilience before as well, like it is about showing up and seeing things for what they are and living life in colour. And I do live my life quite literally in colour. And I have built myself a bit of a reputation around being colourful and being bold, to the point people think that I'm a teacher.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was just like, no, I'm not a teacher, but I mean, I do work with kids and with families, but I think this is just me. This is my
Teaching every day, right? You're teaching your beautiful daughter. You're teaching, people listening today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody following you on Instagram, and so I think you can't. You are a teacher, and I think you got to remember just how much you've done to build of life's history and life's experiences to be able to take you forward.
Yeah, and I am someone, I have a story to tell.
It's a beautiful story.
Thank you. And I have a voice, and I know that I'm in a really privileged position to be in a whether it's work, whether it's me now as a human being. And I do think everybody has a voice. Everybody has a voice inside them, even when it's silent. But I am in a really privileged position to be able to use Instagram or my running or anything as a platform to be able to actually share my voice and share other people's voices if they need to, and give space for other people to have a voice as well. And I know that when I speak, people will listen. And I'm okay with that now. Like, I'm okay with accepting that now.
It's that new version of you, right? That you've now grown into.
Absolutely. And it has, I mean, I was thinking about it on the drive over here as well today. It's like, as Australians, we talk about tall poppy syndrome and stuff. And I'm not going to lie, like, this is some of my acceptance of my own pride has probably gotten in the way of some friendships and stuff, which I'm okay with now. But I also recognise that it is actually okay to celebrate ourselves. I was really lucky to attend an International Women's Day event. It was postponed because of the cyclone, but shortly after the cyclone, I went to an International Women's Day event, and someone asked me, we all had these little prompt cards on the tables, and the person who was opposite me had a prompt card that asked me the question, who inspires you the most? And I've been asked that question so many times, countless times before. And it's always been a celebrity, a sports person, a someone who I've worked with. I remember answering the question last year, and it was my daughter inspires me. And that's not to say that they don't still inspire me, but for the first time ever, I actually responded with, you know what? I inspire the shit out of myself.
The inspiration comes from
the inspiration absolutely is coming from within, because I know what I've achieved, and I need to celebrate me as well. Like, I can celebrate everybody else, but I can't sit around and wait for other people to celebrate me if I don't celebrate myself. And how do I expect my daughter or the other people who are around me, or, you know, the people that I work with, the people who I lead, how do I expect them to celebrate themselves if I'm not prepared to actually put myself up on the same pedestal I put everybody else up on?
That's such a full circle moment to get that final piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely.
And then to have created that masterpiece, and now forgive all the analogies,
Yes.
but now you can go on and create another one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the 777 is the beginning of that.
Yeah.
Of this new found, coloured inspired run forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that probably is 777 for me is about two things. It's about the Bravehearts mission. Absolutely. It's something that I am passionate about. But there is somewhat of a bit of a selfish mission, if you will, because it is also about continuing to learn more about myself and push myself and challenge myself and overcome more challenges, because we'd still come with...
Well, I don't think anybody would see it as selfish, because we all need that, because your message and your experience and your drive and determination is something we just want to keep seeing more and more of. You know, so you never think of it as being selfish. You know, I think this is an incredible thing that you're undertaking. I mean, this 777s is going to take a lot out of you. You know, it's going to be a real confrontation of, of self-doubt and getting beyond that. But getting through that will again add to that foundation, take you on further.
Absolutely. And I know that, part of this mission as well, like, I know that if we go back to the Bravehearts mission around child sexual abuse, I know that what I'm undertaking and what I'm doing in terms of the marathons, the discomfort that I feel and the pain that I might go through and stuff is, it really is nothing compared to a lifetime of ongoing trauma and healing that people who experience child sexual abuse have to undertake.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that'll never leave you in taking each one of those steps.
Yeah.
That pain and suffering that the society and the people that you've had the privilege of working with to be able to help and to guide, the pain and suffering that they've been through is every step that you're going to go through is one step in recognition of that.
Absolutely.
And so you're raising money along the way.
Yep.
Where what's the goal and where are we at?
So my goal is to raise $11,000 for Bravehearts. Currently, I'm sitting at $6,500. $6,500.
Fantastic. And when it was the 777s kick off?
777 kicks off on the 30th of June in Perth.
Okay.
And so fundraising target by just before we go.
Okay, so by start of June, we need to be sitting at over $11,000.
Or close to, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, it's an absolute privilege for me to share today to our viewers and our listeners that you have joined the Buddy team.
Yeah.
Not only as a wonderful athlete, a wonderful inspired athlete, but also our first female athlete that's joining us. But it's much more than just male or female. This is about somebody with such a powerful story that when we connected with you a number of months ago, we just knew that we wanted you as part of this team. And so as part of that journey, not only are we going to do something very special, we're going to do a collaboration together. So it'll be a Buddy hat that we'll be designing.
Yep.
In fact, we have spent the past few days designing over the past couple of weeks, and in the past couple of days you've laser focused in on something. Yeah, and we can't wait to start telling the viewers the story of that. I think we'll leave that till the next episode. But just tell me about that process.
For me, to be fair, it's been quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think when you guys reached out to me. I remember I was in tears. I was just like, I feel like it was like the first opportunity, like I've got my message out, someone's hearing me. And then when we first connected and you were sharing with me what Yeah Buddy was all about, I was so aligned with the values that exist with Your Buddy, and it just felt like, again, the universe was telling me that this is something that needed to happen, and it was just something really exciting. So I was super excited about it. Yes, overwhelmed, a little bit outside my comfort zone and stuff as well, but
and deserve it so, right?
Yeah.
And it's a position that hopefully in many years to come and decades to come, when your daughter's your age, she can look back.
Absolutely.
And Yeah Buddy will be a brand of giants. That's where we're aiming to get. But you to have joined us in this first year as an athlete is something that we're so privileged that you've made that choice to.
And I feel really privileged to be able to be part of it as well.
So you went through. We will touch on a little bit about some of that design process because you spent the time with Eugene, and a lot of what you've said today has really painted the picture into the hat that's going to come out. Just tell us about that journey.
So it was a really exciting journey. But I feel like when I first connected with Eugene and we were coming up with ideas and we were talking metaphors and stuff, I think I mentioned to you guys, like I was mind blown at how very quickly you were able to read me and see who I was. And I felt like I didn't have to give you very much for you to actually be able to see it. And, working with Eugene, I felt it was a really easy process, because it was just, this is what my journey is, and this is where I'm coming from, and this is what my journey is about. And then we were able to come up with some really cool concepts to be able to reflect that.
Beautiful. And so that's going to involve, I'm assuming, a lot of colour?
Absolutely. No one would be surprised with the colour. Yeah.
Fantastic. So that'll be coming out in the next few weeks. Right, so that's absolutely amazing. We can't wait to launch that. All the profits from the hat sales will be going directly to your mission and directly to, obviously, to Bravehearts and the great work that they're doing. So we can't wait to see this raise as much money as possible. And we will have a pre-release in a couple of weeks, and then we will have the live just before you start to get out there and run. And your last run is going to be in the Gold Coast, the Gold Coast Marathon. So Yeah Buddy will be there as well. We'll be there supporting you and cheering you on. We can't wait to see that. But also what we'd like to do as a token of just how powerful your story really is, we'd like to donate $1,000 today directly to you, so you can start on 7, not on 6, when it comes to the Yeah Buddy engagement. And that will get you underway, and then we'll get all that profit over the coming weeks and a couple of months directly to you, and we'll get those hats out on every run, every park run, every marathon around Australia over the next year.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an absolute powerful story, and we can't wait to see what you achieve next. I mean, the 777 is going to be an absolute challenge. You know what Lockie Stewart has done with his marathons repeatedly. Spencer recently just ran his 100 kilometres, and this is such a unique challenge. Going all the way around Australia, apart from Northern Territory. I don't know how that works. But this is such a unique challenge that, led by yourself, I know that you're just going to ace it and just going to make everybody proud.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you.
You too.